Welcome back, my friends, to another tale drawn from the shadows, where loyalty, betrayal, and vengeance collide. Tonight's story isn't just about infidelity, it is about trust, broken so deeply that it awakens something far more dangerous than heartbreak. This is not the kind of betrayal resolved with tears or slammed doors. This is betrayal sharpened into a weapon, betrayal that calls upon the skills of a man trained to survive battlefields most people couldn't imagine. From the opening moment, you will walk alongside a soldier who gave everything to his country, only to find that the war waiting at home was more insidious than any enemy he'd faced abroad. So settle in, because this tale begins in the quiet comfort of an old friend's home, but it will not stay quiet for long. The night air outside was still and cool, the hum of suburban streetlights buzzing faintly through the windows. But inside Ronnie Miller's living room, memories of foreign deserts and long-forgotten firefights crackled louder than the muted television. The leather couch creaked as Danny Hayes shifted his weight, the beer in his hand nearly empty but not forgotten. He wasn't here for the taste. He was here for the ritual of camaraderie. Across from him, Ronnie leaned forward, his graying hair catching the dim glow of the lamp, his expression bright with nostalgia as he replayed stories of a world only they truly understood. Remember that night in Kahar? Ronnie's voice carried that blend of amusement and reverence, reserved for stories told countless times but never grown old. When Thompson thought there was a snake in his sleeping bag. Poor bastard screamed like a kid in a haunted house. Danny let the corner of his mouth twitch into something resembling a smile, his voice deep and even when he replied, "Yeah, I remember." He damn near gave away our position, scared the hell out of all of us before we realized what was happening. He took a long sip of his beer, the carbonation sharp against his throat, the taste grounding him in the present, even as his mind drifted to Afghanistan. The images never came gently. They came like shards. Fragments of sand, gunfire, laughter around campfires, the quiet moments before chaos broke loose. At 38, Danny carried himself with the posture of a career soldier. His shoulders remained squared even in relaxation, his back straight as though invisible weight pressed against it, demanding vigilance. His frame was muscular, carved by decades of training, and his face bore the subtle weathering of countless missions, the kind of lines that spoke more of responsibility than of age. A man like Danny didn't just enter a room, he inhabited it. His presence heavy, unspoken, undeniable. Ronnie chuckled, running a calloused hand through his hair, the gesture betraying the kind of comfort that only came with years of shared battles. Those were simpler times, weren't they? Us against the world, no distractions, no one to answer to except our orders. Danny placed his beer on the coffee table with deliberate care, his eyes narrowing slightly as though considering the weight of that statement. "Speaking of simpler times," he said slowly, "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations, brother. You've earned it." Ronnie's chest swelled with a pride he couldn't mask, his grin spreading wide. "Thanks, man. Colonel says I'm taking over the advanced training division next month. Better hours, better pay. Sarah's already planning what to do with the extra money." Danny nodded, though his thoughts wandered to Eleanor, his wife of 15 years. Lately, she'd been distant, distracted, her phone clutched like a lifeline, her excuses stacking like bricks in a wall between them. She used to look forward to their weekly dinner dates, the little rituals that kept their marriage tethered through his long deployments. But recently, every invitation was deflected with a polite but empty excuse. He pushed the thought aside. Tonight wasn't about his troubles. It was about his brother in arms. "You'll make one hell of an instructor," Danny said, conviction firm in his tone. "Those recruits won't know what hit them." "What about you?" Ronnie asked, his smile fading into seriousness. "Still thinking about that deployment to South Korea?" Danny shrugged, the motion heavy with weariness rather than indifference. "Eleanor's not happy about it." She says we need to spend more time together, work on the marriage. Maybe she's right. He exhaled slowly, the sound more like resignation than agreement. Marriage takes work, Ronnie said knowingly, though there was something in his eyes, something unspoken, that hinted he suspected more lingered beneath Danny's words. "How's Caleb doing at college?" Ronnie asked, smoothly changing the subject. A flicker of pride lit Danny's face, softening his features. "He's thriving. Top of his class in engineering, he's got his mother's brains and my discipline. But across town, inside the Hayes residence, the picture of family life looked very different." Eleanor paced the kitchen with nervous energy, her phone pressed tightly to her ear, her voice hushed yet sharp with excitement. At 35, she was still striking. Honey blonde hair, styled to perfection, emerald eyes sharp enough to disarm anyone who caught them too long. But tonight those eyes glittered with something darker than charm. "Gavin, baby, it's perfect," she whispered, glancing out the window to confirm the driveway was still empty. "Danny's at Ronnie's place. He won't be back for hours." On the other end of the line, Gavin Marshall's voice oozed confidence, his smooth tone practiced like a salesman who'd told one too many lies. "Are you sure about this, Elle? Once we start, there's no going back. I've never been more sure of anything." Eleanor's lips curled into a cruel smile, the bitterness in her voice sharper than glass. "I'm tired of living this lie. Danny's never here, always putting the military first. Do you know he's considering another deployment? After everything I've sacrificed, I deserve better." Gavin's agreement came like a soft trap closing. "You deserve the world, sweetheart. But the plan has to be perfect. No mistakes. The life insurance policy is ironclad," Eleanor whispered. $2 million, double indemnity for accidents. And Stone knows what to do. He's the best. Clean, professional, untraceable. "Are you absolutely certain, Elle?" Gavin pressed, his words syrupy yet edged with calculation. "My husband stopped being my husband years ago," Eleanor spat bitterly. "He's just a stranger in my bed. I want my freedom, Gavin. I want a life with you." What Eleanor couldn't see, what she never suspected, was Gavin's true expression in his office above his restaurant, the Blue Room. His handsome features were cool, detached, his eyes void of the love he feigned over the phone. Behind him stood Stone, a towering mass of scarred knuckles and dead eyes. Gavin winked at his enforcer, smirking as Eleanor poured her heart out. "Soon, baby," he promised, his tone rich with false devotion. "Just stick to the plan." But their conspiracy was about to be witnessed by someone they hadn't accounted for. The front door of the Hayes residence opened with the quiet creak of familiarity. Caleb Hayes stepped inside, his backpack slung over one shoulder, the weariness of college life etched into his 18-year-old frame. He'd come home unexpectedly, eager to surprise his mother, but the sound of her voice froze him mid-step. He pressed himself against the wall, phone in hand, his thumb already tapping the record button as Eleanor's words cut through him like knives. "Sorry. False alarm," Eleanor whispered into the phone after checking the hallway and seeing nothing. "Now, about Stone. You're sure he can make it look like an accident? Trust me, Elle." Gavin's voice was unmistakable. "Stone's handled plenty of situations. Your military hero won't know what hit him." Caleb's blood ran cold. His mother, the woman who had kissed his scraped knees and packed his lunches, was plotting his father's murder. His breath quickened, his grip trembling on the phone as he captured every word. But betrayal doesn't wait quietly in the shadows. A floorboard creaked behind him. Caleb turned too late, massive hands seizing him by the shoulders. Stone's expression was blank, merciless, as he drove a brutal fist into Caleb's stomach. The phone clattered to the floor, recording unfinished, as Caleb gasped for air. Eleanor appeared, her face pale, voice breaking. "Caleb! What are you doing here?" Her son's voice cracked with disbelief, even as he struggled against Stone's iron grip. "Mom, how could you?" Stone didn't wait for Eleanor's reply. With terrifying efficiency, he dragged Caleb toward the building's elevator, ignoring the boy's desperate fight. Eleanor followed, frozen between panic and complicity, her breath shallow as the doors yawned open. And with one merciless motion, Stone hurled Caleb down the shaft. The thud that followed echoed like a death knell through Eleanor's chest. She screamed, though the sound was more performance than grief. Stone bent calmly, retrieved Caleb's shattered phone, and crushed it in his fist. His first words of the evening were delivered in a low, emotionless rumble. "It's done." Eleanor's hands shook as she dialed Gavin. "This changes everything," Gavin snapped when she relayed what had happened. "Get out, both of you. I'll send someone to clean up the mess." As Eleanor and Stone fled into the night, Caleb lay broken but alive at the bottom of that shaft, his breath shallow, his mind clinging to a single thought through the haze of pain. He had to warn his father. Part 2. Shattered Realities. The call came at midnight, shattering the fragile calm that lingered in Ronnie Miller's living room. Danny's phone vibrated against the table, the unknown number drawing a frown across his face. He answered with the clipped, professional tone of a soldier who had taken more late-night calls than he cared to count. "Staff Sergeant Hayes." The voice on the other end carried the gravity of bad news. "Sergeant Hayes, this is Officer Martinez, Metro PD. I'm calling about your son, Caleb Hayes. He's been taken to Memorial Hospital in critical condition. For Danny, the world didn't spin or collapse. It sharpened. Every sound in the room faded into silence, every detail around him sharpening into crystal clarity. His military training rose like muscle memory, pushing aside panic, commanding order where chaos threatened. His hand tightened around the phone as he asked, his tone flat, controlled, lethal in its restraint. "What happened?" "He was found at the bottom of the elevator shaft in your building," Officer Martinez explained, his voice grim. "We're treating it as a potential assault case." Ronnie had been watching Danny's face, and the instant change in his expression told him everything. He was already on his feet, grabbing his keys, even before Danny snapped his phone shut. "What's wrong?" Ronnie asked. "Caleb's hurt." Danny's words were short, sharp, but in his eyes burned a fire that Ronnie recognized from combat. The same cold focus Danny wore right before things turned deadly. "I'm driving," Ronnie said without hesitation. The 12-minute drive to Memorial Hospital stretched like an eternity. Danny sat rigid in the passenger seat, his jaw clenched, his mind racing through possibilities and questions. Why was Caleb home? Who wanted to hurt him? Where was Eleanor? His silence was suffocating, the kind of silence born not from shock, but from a storm building inside, measured and waiting. The emergency room swarmed with movement, voices, footsteps, alarms, but Danny moved through it like a missile locked on target. His eyes swept the signs, searching, zeroing in until he reached the ICU. The sight of Caleb on the bed nearly broke the mask he wore. Tubes, wires, monitors surrounded his son's battered body, but Danny didn't flinch. He couldn't. Not now. "Mr. Hayes," a doctor said, approaching with a clipboard. "I'm Dr. Chun. Your son has multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a concussion. We've stabilized him, but the next 24 hours are critical." "Is he conscious?" Danny asked. "In and out," Dr. Chun replied. "Try not to agitate him." Danny nodded, stepping closer to the bed. He took Caleb's hand gently, his face softening just enough for his son to see the man behind the soldier. Caleb's eyelids fluttered, then opened, hazy with pain, but sharp enough to focus on his father. His voice was a hoarse whisper. "Dad, I'm here, son." "Save your strength." Caleb's grip tightened weakly. "No, had to warn you. Mom." Danny leaned closer, his ears straining to catch every syllable. "Planning? With Gavin?" "Planning what?" Danny pressed, though his voice remained soft. your murder." The words hit Danny like a round to the chest, but he didn't flinch. His expression didn't shift. He only leaned closer, his voice low and steady. "What else, son?" "Recorded. Stone caught me. Threw me." Caleb's eyes rolled closed, exhaustion dragging him into unconsciousness. Danny straightened slowly, the fury inside him sharpening into something colder than rage. He had suspected Eleanor's distance, had sensed a betrayal building, but this, plotting his death, involving their son in her treachery, nearly killing him to keep it quiet, this was beyond betrayal. This was war. Two detectives entered the room, flashing badges with the careful caution of men entering sensitive ground. "Sergeant Hayes," one said. "Detective Wilson." "This is Detective Cooper. We need to ask you a few questions." Danny turned, his face an unreadable mask. "My son's resting." "We understand, but this is serious," Wilson said. "There are signs of foul play." "My priority is my son's recovery," Danny replied evenly. His tone was polite, controlled, but it made clear he had no intention of cooperating fully. "Sir, we need to know if your son had enemies," Cooper pressed. "Anyone who might have wanted to hurt him?" Danny's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "My son's a college student. Works part-time at a library. He doesn't have enemies." "And your wife?" Wilson asked. "We haven't been able to reach her." "I was at a friend's house." "I don't know where Eleanor is," Danny said, the lie sliding easily from his lips. He had no intention of sharing what Caleb had revealed. This wasn't for the police. This wasn't for courts or trials. This was personal. The detectives exchanged skeptical glances but backed off. "We'll need a formal statement tomorrow." Danny gave a curt nod. "Not tonight." When they left, Danny pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, debts to call in. Eleanor, Gavin, and their brute had unleashed something they couldn't comprehend. Danny Hayes had survived 3 combat tours, not by luck, but by skill, ruthlessness, and sheer will. He would not forgive. He would not forget. He dialed a number from memory. "Jake, it's Hayes. Remember that debt you owe me from Fallujah? I'm calling it in the hospital room, settled into uneasy quiet, broken only by the beeping of machines." Danny sat by Caleb's side, mind whirring like a tactical briefing, replaying itself. 15 years of marriage unraveled before him. Eleanor had once been different, supportive, devoted, the kind of woman who had understood the demands of military life. When had that woman turned into someone capable of plotting his death for an insurance payout? He remembered her subtle changes, her complaints about money, her bitterness toward deployments, her absence from unit functions. He had thought it was the strain of military life. He had been wrong. A nurse entered, her voice soft. "Mr. Hayes, there's a call for you at the nurse's station." "Says he's your commanding officer." Danny squeezed Caleb's hand once before stepping out. The voice on the line was rough and familiar. "Hayes, it's Colonel Matthews. I heard about your son. What do you need?" "I need information," Danny said coldly. "Everything you can find on a restaurant owner named Gavin Marshall and his associate, Marcus Stone Sullivan. Off the books." A pause. "This related to what happened to your boy?" "Yes, sir." "Give me an hour," Matthews said, then hung up. Danny returned to the ICU, pulled out his laptop, and began digging while he waited. Social media painted Gavin Marshall as a slick entrepreneur, owner of the Blue Room, one of the city's trendiest restaurants. The photos showed him in expensive suits, surrounded by patrons and admirers. But Matthews' encrypted files painted a different picture. Gavin drowning in gambling debts, laundering money through his restaurant, connected to organized crime. And Stone, Marcus Sullivan, an enforcer with a trail of assault charges that had mysteriously vanished before trial. A knock at the door drew Danny's attention. Ronnie stood there, his face grim. "Got your message." "What's the plan?" Danny didn't hesitate. "Eleanor's planning to have me killed. She's working with a criminal named Gavin Marshall." Their enforcer threw Caleb down an elevator shaft to keep him quiet. Ronnie's eyes widened, then narrowed. "What do you need?" "Surveillance equipment, weapons, clean phones, and your help tracking them down before they realize Caleb survived." Ronnie studied his friend carefully. "You're going to kill them?" "No." Danny's smile was cold, humorless. "Death would be too quick. I'm going to destroy them, piece by piece until they wish they were dead." Meanwhile, across town, Eleanor sat in Gavin's office above the Blue Room. Her nerves were raw, her hands trembling as she paced. "We have to leave. Danny will figure it out." "Calm down," Gavin snapped, pouring himself a drink. "Stone handled it. He threw my son down an elevator shaft." Eleanor's voice cracked. "This wasn't part of the plan." "Plans change," Gavin said coldly. "Your son was recording us." "What did you expect Stone to do? Ask him nicely to delete it?" Eleanor's breath hitched. "Danny will kill us when he finds out." "If he finds out," Gavin corrected, his eyes sharp, "and by then, we'll be long gone." "The insurance policy pays double for accidents, remember?" Eleanor sank into a chair, her composure unraveling. "I just wanted to be free, to be with you." But Gavin wasn't listening. His thoughts were elsewhere. Eleanor had been a useful pawn, but nothing more. He had no intention of sharing his future with her. She was just another stepping stone to escape his debts. Back at the hospital, Danny's phone buzzed again. "Boss," Jake's voice said, crisp and efficient. "Found them. They're holed up at the Blue Room. Want me to keep eyes on?" "Yes," Danny replied. He stretched his shoulders, his face set like stone. "And Jake?" "Thank you. No thanks needed." "Nobody hurts family," Jake answered. Danny leaned down, brushing Caleb's hair back from his forehead. "Rest easy, son. Dad's going to take care of everything." In the hospital parking lot, Ronnie handed him a duffel bag heavy with supplies. Burner phones, surveillance gear, a few other things you might need. Guns are clean, untraceable. Danny accepted the bag with a nod. "Stay with Caleb. Don't let anyone near him, especially not Eleanor. If she shows up, call me immediately." As he drove toward the Blue Room, his phone lit up with Eleanor's name. He answered, his voice flat. "Danny," she said, her voice trembling, "I just heard about Caleb. Is he okay?" "Where were you, Eleanor?" I was out shopping." "Danny, please, what happened to our son?" "Someone threw him down an elevator shaft. Someone named Stone. Ring any bells?" Silence. Then carefully, "Danny, I don't know what you're talking about." "You must be in shock." "We're done, Eleanor," Danny said coldly. "Don't come home. Don't try to see Caleb. Your things will be packed and sent wherever you want them." "Danny, wait, let me explain." He hung up, shutting the phone off completely. The time for explanations was over. At the Blue Room, Eleanor stared at her phone in horror. "He knows," she whispered. "Oh God, he knows." "Impossible," Gavin snapped, though his face paled. "Stone, are you sure the kid didn't say anything?" Stone shook his head. "We need to leave now," Eleanor insisted. "No one's leaving," Gavin barked. "If we run, we look guilty." "We stick to the plan. Stone will handle Hayes just like he handled the kid." Eleanor shivered at the impassive look on Stone's face. She had wanted freedom, excitement, a life away from duty and sacrifice. Instead, she had chained herself to monsters on both sides, one she betrayed and one she feared. Danny parked a block away, setting up surveillance in an empty office building with a clear view of the Blue Room. Through high-powered lenses, he watched Eleanor pace Gavin's office, watched Gavin drink and bark into phones, watched Stone stand silent, immovable, like a wall. His phone buzzed with a text. Building plans, exits, vulnerabilities. He memorized them, cataloging weaknesses, planning contingencies. His phone buzzed again, this time from Ronnie. "Caleb's awake." Stabilizing. Asking for you, Danny packed up. He had seen enough. Eleanor, Gavin, and Stone were all within his sights. They just didn't know it yet. For now, his son came first. Back at the hospital, Caleb's eyes opened when his father entered. "Dad." "I'm here, son." "What are you going to do?" Caleb whispered. Danny met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "What needs to be done? They're going to pay for what they did to you." Caleb nodded weakly. "I trust you, Dad." Danny's jaw tightened. "Good. Don't tell the police anything yet. This is between us." As night fell, Danny stepped into the hallway. Ronnie waited. "What's the plan?" "They think they're hunters," Danny said, his voice low and deadly. "It's time they learned what it feels like to be prey." And so the hunt began. Part 3, Seeds of Vengeance. The hospital hummed with its late-night rhythm, machines beeping in steady cadence, nurses moving in quiet efficiency, the faint smell of antiseptic clinging to the air like a second skin. Danny Hayes sat in the hard plastic chair beside his son's bed, posture rigid despite the exhaustion tugging at his body. His mind worked like a machine, calculating, cross-referencing, running through possibilities the way he once dissected enemy positions on foreign battlefields. He thought back over 15 years of marriage, the woman he once loved, and how easily she had turned his loyalty into a noose around his neck. Eleanor had once been a nurse who spoke of compassion and duty, who kissed him goodbye before deployments and held his hand when he returned. But that woman had been replaced by someone colder, someone who looked at him not as a partner, but as an obstacle. The subtle changes over the years now sharpened in his memory. The constant phone in her hand, the excuses for missing dinners, the bitterness that had crept into her voice whenever the military called him away again. Danny had told himself it was stress, that all marriages carried strain, but he saw now that he had been ignoring the roots of rot spreading silently through their life together. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. A nurse leaned in, her voice quiet but urgent. "Mr. Hayes, there's a call for you at the nurse's station." Says he's your commanding officer, Danny Rose, squeezing Caleb's hand once before stepping into the corridor. The line was already alive when he picked up the receiver. Colonel Matthews' voice came through, deep and firm. "Hayes, I heard about your boy. Tell me what you need." Danny's voice was clipped, carrying the iron edge of a man shifting into operational mode. "I need everything you can dig up on Gavin Marshall and Marcus Sullivan. Off the record. Discreet. Fast." There was a pause on the other end, heavy with the weight of what Matthews was agreeing to. "This about what happened to Caleb?" "Yes, sir. Give me an hour." Then the line went dead. Back in the room, Danny opened his laptop, beginning his own hunt. Social media gave him the polished surface of Gavin's life. A businessman in his early 40s, owner of the Blue Room, always photographed in expensive suits, surrounded by admirers. But when Colonel Matthews' encrypted files arrived on his screen, the facade crumbled. Gavin was drowning in debt, gambling away fortunes he didn't have, laundering money for dangerous people through his restaurant. And Marcus Stone Sullivan was no mere bodyguard. His file revealed a history littered with assault charges, all conveniently dismissed before reaching trial. He was an enforcer, a shadow made flesh, a man whose fists had been the last thing too many people ever saw. Danny scrolled through records, noting connections, habits, vulnerabilities. This wasn't random betrayal. This was a professional conspiracy. The door creaked open, and Ronnie stepped inside, his face drawn but steady. He had seen men plan violence before and knew what it looked like. "Got your message," he said quietly. "What's the plan?" Danny didn't hesitate. "Eleanor wants me dead. She's working with Marshall, and Stone is the one who put Caleb in that hospital bed. They think they've covered their tracks, but they don't know who they're dealing with. I need surveillance gear, weapons, burner phones, and I need your help. We find them. We dismantle them before they realize Caleb survived." Ronnie stared at him for a long moment. "You're going to kill them?" Danny's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Death would be too quick. I'm going to take everything they care about piece by piece until they beg for it to end." While Danny and Ronnie began to assemble their quiet war, Eleanor paced Gavin's office above the blue room like a trapped animal. The polished wood and plush chairs of the trendy restaurant felt more like a prison now. She wrung her hands, her voice tight with panic. "We have to get out of town. Danny will know. He'll figure it out." Gavin poured himself a drink, his calm bordering on contempt. "Calm down." Stone handled it. Eleanor's laugh was brittle, sharp. "He threw my son down an elevator shaft. That wasn't the plan." Gavin's mask of charm slipped, revealing steel underneath. "Plans change. Your son was recording us. What did you expect Stone to do, pat him on the head and ask nicely? He's a liability." Eleanor's hands trembled as she sank into a chair. "Danny will come for us." "You don't understand what he's capable of." Gavin's smirk held no sympathy. "If he finds out..." "By then, we'll be long gone. The insurance money doubles for accidents. That's the plan. That's what we stick to." She closed her eyes, tears threatening. But even as she trembled, Gavin's mind was already calculating his own escape, one that didn't include her. She had been useful, nothing more. Back at the hospital, Danny's phone buzzed with Jake's voice on the other end. "Boss, I've got him." "They're holed up at the blue room. Want me to keep eyes on?" Danny's voice was quiet but lethal. "Yes, and Jake. Thank you, no thanks needed." Nobody hurts family. Danny ended the call, turning back to his son. Caleb stirred weakly, his lips parting as he whispered, "Did you get my message?" Danny leaned close, his voice low but unwavering. "I got it. Don't worry about them. Focus on getting stronger." Caleb's weak grip tightened slightly. "What are you going to do?" Danny met his eyes, his expression carved from stone. "What needs to be done?" Later that night in the parking lot, Ronnie waited with a duffel bag. Burner phones, surveillance gear, untraceable guns. Everything you asked for. Danny accepted the bag with a nod, his expression unreadable. "Stay with Caleb. Don't let anyone near him, especially not Eleanor. If she shows up, call me." Ronnie's voice was low, steady. "What are you going to do?" Danny's eyes gleamed with cold fire. "Show them what it feels like to be prey." Driving toward the blue room, Danny's phone lit up with Eleanor's name. He answered, his voice flat. "Danny?" Her voice trembled, rehearsed panic dripping from every word. "I just heard about Caleb." "Is he okay?" His grip tightened on the wheel. "Where were you, Eleanor?" I was out shopping." "Danny, please, what happened?" "Someone threw him down an elevator shaft. Someone named Stone. Ring any bells?" Silence stretched, heavy and damning. When Eleanor finally spoke again, her voice was measured, calculated. "Danny, you're not making sense." "You must be in shock." Danny's voice hardened into steel. "We're done, Eleanor. Don't come home. Don't come near Caleb. Your things will be packed and sent wherever you want them." "Danny, wait. Let me explain." He hung up, cutting the line, shutting off his phone entirely. At the blue room, Eleanor clutched her phone, her hands trembling. "He knows," she whispered. Gavin's face paled despite his protest. "Impossible." His gaze flicked toward Stone. "You're sure the kid didn't say anything?" Stone shook his head, silent as ever. Eleanor's panic spiraled. "We need to run. You don't understand what he'll do." Gavin slammed his glass down, his composure cracking. "No one's running. If we run, we look guilty. We stay. We stick to the plan. Hayes is just a man. Stone will take care of him." Eleanor looked at Stone's massive frame, his impassive face, and shuddered. She had wanted freedom and excitement, but instead she had bound herself to men whose souls were as cold as the steel they carried. Danny parked a block away, setting up his surveillance equipment in an abandoned office building with a perfect vantage point. Through his high-powered lens, he watched Eleanor pacing, Gavin barking into phones, Stone standing motionless like a sentinel. His phone buzzed again. Jake sending building plans, exits, electrical panels, vulnerabilities. Danny studied them with the precision of a strategist, his mind mapping every point of weakness. Another buzz, financial records, proof of Gavin's mounting debts and criminal ties. Danny's cold smile flickered in the dim light. Their alliance was fragile, built on lies and desperation, and he would be the weight that crushed it. Back at the hospital, Ronnie texted, "Caleb's awake. Stable. Asking for you." Danny packed his equipment, satisfied he had what he needed for now. His son came first. In the ICU, Caleb's eyes fluttered open as Danny entered. His voice was weak but steady. "Dad, what are you going to do?" Danny's hand gripped his son's tightly. "I'm going to make sure they never hurt you again." Caleb nodded, his trust absolute, even as exhaustion dragged him back under. Danny stepped into the hallway where Ronnie waited. "Doctors say he'll need at least a week," Ronnie reported. Danny's eyes hardened. "Good. That gives me time." And so the groundwork was laid. Eleanor, Gavin, and Stone thought themselves untouchable, thought they had orchestrated the perfect betrayal. But Danny Hayes was no ordinary husband, no ordinary target. He was a soldier, forged in the crucible of war, sharpened by survival, and now armed with a father's fury. They had crossed a line and there was no going back. The hunt had begun, and in Danny's eyes, they were already dead. They just hadn't realized it yet. Part 4. The Shadow Stalker. Danny Hayes transformed the abandoned office space overlooking the Blue Room into a command center that would have impressed any military strategist. Surveillance monitors glowed in the dim light, showing exterior angles of the restaurant, thermal imaging of the interior, and feeds from discrete microphones planted by Jake's team. Wires and equipment sprawled across the room in organized chaos, each piece carefully calibrated for precision. Danny sat at the center of it all, his posture straight, his gaze locked, his mind running through contingencies the way others might play out chess moves. This wasn't revenge in the heat of passion. It was a calculated operation, orchestrated with the same discipline that had guided him through battlefields where one mistake meant death. The voices crackling through his earpiece were his symphony, and he was the conductor. Every breath timed, every step monitored, every variable accounted for. Jake's voice came first, low but crisp. "Targets on the move. Eleanor just left through the back entrance. Heading east on foot." Danny adjusted the earpiece and spoke in a measured tone. "Stay on her." "Don't engage." Ronnie's update followed, his voice steady but carrying the weight of old battle camaraderie. "Phone taps are active." Call logs, messages. Coming through now, Danny scanned the tablet Ronnie handed him, his eyes narrowing as he read. Gavin's texts revealed a double life, whispered promises to Eleanor while simultaneously feeding reassurances to another woman named Victoria, a swimsuit model who seemed to believe she was his future. Danny's lips curled in a grim satisfaction. Divide and conquer, one of the oldest military tactics, and Gavin had already created the fault lines himself. Danny tapped a burner phone, sending a single message to Eleanor. "Check your lover boy's Instagram DMs with Victoria. Thought you should know." Within minutes, Eleanor's GPS marker reversed direction, heading straight back to the Blue Room. Danny leaned back slightly, his eyes never leaving the monitors. "She's going to confront him," he murmured. "Let them tear each other apart." Inside the restaurant office, Eleanor stormed in, fury radiating from her like heat off asphalt. Gavin looked up from his desk, his expression slipping briefly before he pulled the mask of charm back into place. "Baby, what's wrong?" Eleanor shoved her phone into his face, her voice cracking with rage. "Don't you dare baby me, Victoria, the swimsuit model. How long have you been playing me?" Stone shifted from his corner, a wall of menace, but Gavin waved him back, rising with arms spread in mock innocence. "Eleanor, you're not thinking clearly. Who sent you this?" Her laugh was sharp, bordering on hysterical. "Does it matter? It's real. I gave up everything for you, my marriage, my family, my son, and you were stringing me along like a fool." Gavin's mask cracked, his voice snapping with venom. "Your son? You mean the witness who could ruin everything? The one Stone should have finished properly?" The words hung in the air like a blade. Stone's frame tensed at the insult, but he said nothing, his stoicism unbroken. Eleanor's eyes blazed, her voice rising. "Don't you dare blame him! This was your plan. You promised me freedom, love, a new life, but you're just like Danny said, a user." Gavin's head snapped up at that, suspicion twisting his features. "When exactly did you talk to Danny?" Realization dawned on Eleanor too late. Gavin's expression hardened, and his voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Have you been in contact with your husband?" Eleanor stammered, backing away, her words falling apart. "No, I swear. He called me about Caleb, that's all." Gavin's eyes narrowed as he signaled to Stone. "Search her." Danny watched through his surveillance feed as Stone's massive hands patted Eleanor down, pulling her phone from her pocket and tossing it to Gavin. The image of her panic filled the thermal imaging, her frantic movements obvious even through the distortion. Jake's voice murmured in Danny's ear. "She's done for. Want me to move in?" Danny's response was cold and final. Negative. Let it play out. Gavin scrolled through Eleanor's phone, his face darkening as he saw unknown numbers, messages warning about surveillance, fragments of communication that smelled of betrayal. He snapped his gaze to Eleanor. "You were protecting yourself." "There was never an us." His smirk twisted cruel. "There never is." "You were useful. That's all." He nodded toward Stone. "Take her to the basement." "We'll have a long conversation about loyalty in the restaurant's basement." Eleanor sat tied to a chair, mascara streaking down her face, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please, Gavin, I can explain. I wasn't betraying you. I was trying to protect us." Gavin paced in front of her, drink in hand, his voice dripping contempt. "Protect us? You're not clever enough for that. You're a bored housewife who watched too many soap operas thinking you could play everyone. You're nothing, Eleanor. Nothing." Her tears turned to anger, her voice shaking but sharp. "And you're nothing but a con man drowning in debt. You think I didn't know about the money you stole? About the people you owe? You're finished." Gavin's hand lashed out, striking her across the face. "Shut up!" She spat blood, her eyes wild. "Danny will find you. When he does, you'll beg for death." Gavin sneered. "And what will he do to me? What can he possibly—" The sound of his voice broke off as the shadows shifted. Danny emerged from the darkness, his presence filling the room like a predator, stepping into the open. His suppressed pistol leveled at Gavin, his combat knife glinting faintly at his ankle. Stone spun toward him, drawing his weapon, but 2 tranquilizer darts sank into his neck before he could raise it. The giant staggered, blinking in shock, then collapsed like a felled tree. Gavin scrambled for his gun, but Danny was faster, a silent shot ripping through his knee and dropping him to the ground with a scream. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Gavin's groans. Danny stepped into the circle of light, his face unreadable, his voice calm, almost conversational. "Hello, Eleanor." "Miss me?" He moved with efficiency, securing Stone with heavy zip ties, ignoring Eleanor's gasps of relief that twisted quickly into terror. Gavin writhed on the floor, clutching his leg, spitting curses that Danny didn't acknowledge. "They were gonna kill me," Eleanor babbled, her voice trembling. "Danny, thank God you're here." "You have to believe me." I changed my mind. Danny's gaze cut through her, cold and merciless. Changed your mind? Before or after Stone threw our son down an elevator shaft? Before or after you plotted to collect my life insurance? Gavin tried to speak, his voice desperate. She's lying. It was her idea. The insurance, the accident, all of it. I was just... Danny crouched beside him, his expression calm as he cinched a tourniquet around Gavin's bleeding knee. I know exactly what you planned. I've spent weeks gathering evidence. Bank records, texts, surveillance. Every step of your betrayal is cataloged. He pulled out a phone, pressing play. Eleanor's voice filled the room, whispering seductively about murder. Another recording followed, Gavin laughing with Victoria about his meal ticket. Danny looked down at Gavin, his voice like ice. You weren't clever. You weren't careful. You were sloppy. Eleanor began to sob openly, mascara streaks cutting through her face. Danny, please. We can fix this. For Caleb's sake, we can fix it. Danny's voice snapped like a whip. Don't you dare say his name. You lost that right when you chose this garbage over your son. Gavin groaned, his voice raw. Be reasonable, Hayes. I've got connections, money. We can make a deal. Danny's lip curled in disgust. A deal? Like the one you made with the Mendoza cartel? Or the one that left my son fighting for his life? No, Gavin. The only deal you're getting is consequences. He turned to Stone's unconscious bulk. And him. Marcus Sullivan. 3 assaults, 2 attempted murders, all swept under the rug. Not this time. This time there are witnesses, DNA, and Caleb's recording. Your voice is distinctive, Stone? Very distinctive. Danny moved with calm precision, his radio crackling softly as Ronnie's voice came through. All clear upstairs. Jake's got the perimeter. Danny's answer was short. Good. Start with the office. I want every file, every account. Transfer everything, then wipe it clean. Eleanor's voice rose in panic. What are you doing? Danny didn't look at her. Taking back control. You wanted excitement, Eleanor? Adventure? Congratulations, you've got it. Welcome to your nightmare. He prepared a syringe, his hands steady, his tone clinical. Gavin's eyes widened in fear. You're going to kill us? Danny's voice was cold as stone. Death is too kind. No, you're going to live long enough to watch everything you value stripped away, piece by piece. One by one, he injected them, the sedatives pulling them under as his voice followed them into darkness. This is just the beginning. Part 5, Consequences. The warehouse Danny had chosen lay at the city's outskirts, a grim monument of rusted steel and concrete, far removed from the polished facades of Gavin Marshall's restaurant empire. Inside, 3 figures sat bound to metal chairs, arranged in a cruel triangle, so that each could see the other's suffering as plainly as their own. Harsh fluorescent light bled down from a single fixture, casting stark shadows that stretched across the cracked floor, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the bulb and the strained breathing of the captives. Eleanor shifted against her restraints, her face pale and streaked with tears, her eyes darting between Gavin, who sat slumped and clutching his ruined knee, and Stone, whose massive body remained tense even in chains, his expression stoic but his eyes burning with defiance. Into this tableau stepped Danny Hayes, still clad in the tactical gear of a soldier, his presence overwhelming, his movements deliberate, his face an unreadable mask carved from stone. He set 2 laptops on a table in the center of the room, their screens glowing with financial data and surveillance feeds, the glow reflecting off his hard features as he began the session not with threats, but with cold exposition. He started with Gavin, turning the screens so that the disgraced restaurateur could see the mountain of evidence laid bare. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, falsified loans, embezzled investments, all scrolled past with clinical precision as Danny narrated in a voice as steady as a surgeon's. "You've been busy," he said, his words edged with contempt, "skimming from your restaurant, laundering cartel money, stealing from your investors. But the best part, he continued, clicking to another file, was what you stole from Eleanor. Tell her, Gavin. Tell her about the accounts in her name, the loans you forged using her Social Security, the mortgages she never saw, the credit cards you drained to their limits. Tell her about the life insurance policy you took out on her with yourself as the beneficiary. Eleanor's head snapped toward Gavin in shock, her voice breaking into a shrill accusation. You were going to kill me too! Danny's laugh was dry and humorless. Now she understands. You weren't her partner, Gavin. You never intended to be. She was just another mark in your endless scams, Gavin sputtered, his charm gone, his desperation raw. He's lying. But the screen did not lie, and Danny's eyes held the cold satisfaction of a man dismantling his enemy piece by piece. Next, Danny turned his attention to Stone, the hulking enforcer who had tossed his son down an elevator shaft without hesitation. Danny's voice carried no malice, only certainty as he pulled up audio recordings. Stone's voice filled the room, discussing past jobs, threats, and casual violence. You set me up, Stone growled, speaking for the first time, his deep voice rough as gravel. Danny's gaze met his unflinching. Didn't have to. You set yourself up every time you bragged to the wrong ear. All I had to do was connect the dots, show the right people the right evidence, and suddenly all your erased charges come roaring back. This time, you won't walk away. He displayed police reports, witness statements, and forensic evidence linking Stone to crimes long thought buried. Your trail of bodies ends here, Danny said quietly, his words falling like a sentence pronounced. Finally, his gaze turned to Eleanor, the woman who had once been his wife, the mother of his child, now reduced to a trembling wreck of mascara and regret. He pulled up her text messages, her recorded phone calls, her whispered plans of murder, and he projected them across the screen for her to see her own treachery laid bare. You thought you were clever, he said, his voice low and resonant. The grieving wife, the concerned mother, the seductive mistress. But masks always slip. Your parents have heard these recordings, so have your coworkers, your friends, your church. Everyone knows what you are now. Eleanor sobbed openly, her pleas incoherent, her voice a shattered echo of the woman she once pretended to be. Danny, please, I was confused. I was unhappy. I didn't know what I wanted. His reply was swift and merciless. You knew exactly what you wanted. You wanted me dead. Caleb fatherless, and a future funded by betrayal. That was your choice. Now live with it. Hours passed in that warehouse as Danny orchestrated their psychological collapse. He didn't need to break bones or draw blood. He simply forced them to confront the ruins of their schemes and the inevitability of their downfall. He spoke not as a husband or a betrayed man, but as a soldier delivering justice, his tone stripped of emotion, his every move deliberate. By the time he was finished, their reputations, their finances, and their alliances had been annihilated. They were broken shells, their fear no longer of prison or death, but of the knowledge that Danny Hayes had dismantled them so thoroughly that there was nothing left to salvage. When he finally stepped out of the warehouse, leaving them to stew in their own destruction, the night air felt almost serene, the city lights in the distance glimmering as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But for Danny, everything had changed. By dawn, the police had surrounded the warehouse, acting on an anonymous tip delivered with meticulous timing. Inside, they found Gavin, Eleanor, and Stone bound and beaten, not with fists, but with truth, their confessions laid out, their evidence meticulously arranged like a prosecutor's dream. Detective Wilson led the raid, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the captives. They spoke of Danny in broken fragments, their voices shaking with equal parts terror and awe, describing him not as a man, but as an inevitability, a storm that had swept through their lives and left only ruin. Wilson questioned Danny later, circling him like a hound catching the scent of blood. But Danny's responses were measured, his tracks clean, his alibi unbreakable. "What you have," Danny told him in a voice flat as steel, "are 3 criminals who conspired to murder me for insurance money and nearly killed my son to cover it up. Focus on that. Everything else is noise." Wilson studied him long and hard, but in the end he had nothing to hold on to, nothing to prove the soldier's hand in the devastation beyond suspicion. And suspicion was not evidence. Weeks bled into months, and trials unfolded with the inevitability of falling dominoes. Gavin Marshall's empire crumbled as financial crimes piled high, his debts exposed, his allies abandoning him in droves. Stone Sullivan, the immovable enforcer, faced a parade of witnesses and charges, his past finally catching him in a net he could not break. Eleanor Hayes, once the picture of suburban charm, sat in a courtroom as her recordings were played aloud, her betrayal echoing in the air for strangers to judge. The sentences were heavy, the verdicts damning, and as the gavel struck, Danny sat in the back of the courtroom, his face expressionless, his son at his side. Caleb still bore the scars of his fall, his gait slower, his body stiffer, but his eyes were clear, filled with a kind of hardened resolve that mirrored his father's. When the trials ended and the world moved on, Danny and Caleb did not linger. They left the whispers behind, moving to a quieter town where their names meant little and their story was just another rumor half believed. Time did not soften Danny, but it reshaped him. He founded a security consultancy, Hayes Protection Services, specializing in the kind of cases others feared to touch. High-risk clients, corporate whistleblowers, families stalked by predators, all found shelter in the shadow of his firm. He recruited men and women cut from similar cloth, veterans forged in wars abroad and battles at home, soldiers who understood that justice sometimes required stepping into the gray. Caleb, older now and thriving as an aerospace engineer, supported his father in subtler ways, lending his technical expertise when operations required it, his quiet intelligence balancing Danny's hardened instincts. Together, they built not just a business, but a mission, one that turned pain into purpose and betrayal into protection. Years passed, and the echoes of the warehouse faded, though they never disappeared entirely. Eleanor was found dead in her prison cell. Her death ruled a suicide, though Danny and Caleb both recognized the unanswered questions beneath the official report. Gavin followed years later, his body discovered hanging in his own cell, another convenient end to a man who had once believed himself untouchable. Stone remained alive but broken, serving his sentence in silence, his body aging, his will eroded. For Danny, their fates were not victories, but inevitabilities, the natural conclusion of choices made long ago. He did not celebrate their deaths. He acknowledged them as consequences, nothing more. In quieter moments, Danny sat on the porch of his modest home, watching his son and later his daughter-in-law, Sarah, the same Sarah Chun who had once been his therapist, build a life untouched by the lies that had destroyed their past. He found peace not in forgiveness, but in clarity, in the knowledge that when betrayal had threatened his family, he had met it with unflinching resolve. His legacy was not the destruction of Eleanor, Gavin, or Stone, but the survival of his son, the continuation of a family line tempered by fire but unbroken. And though he knew the darkness within him had not vanished, he carried it now as a tool, a weapon sheathed, ready to be drawn only when the innocent required protection. In the end, Danny Hayes understood that his story was not about revenge but about consequence. It was about a soldier who brought the battlefield home, who applied the same precision and ruthlessness to betrayal that he once did to war. It was about a father who chose action over despair, who transformed pain into purpose. And it was about a truth that outlived all others. Love, when betrayed, can curdle into something terrible. But love, when defended, can forge legacies that endure long after the betrayers are dust. The world outside might never know the full story, but for Danny and Caleb, the truth was simple and unshakable. They had faced betrayal, they had survived it, and they had turned it into a mission that would outlast them both.